The NHL trade deadline is approaching fast, coming up on March 3rd, and the Vegas Golden Knights seemingly are in a buying market. With the injury of Mark Stone, moving him to LTIR would free up a good amount of cap space for the Vegas Golden Knights. So I want to go through all the names that potentially could get linked to and potentially move to the Vegas Golden Knights once the trade deadline arises. Now, some trades have already occurred, which, is really nice to see that it's not all happening in like a 2-day span like the NBA does with their trade deadline. But let's go through some of these options, talk about what they could do for Vegas, and probably what the teams would be expecting in return for this trade. Now, sadly, with the Leafs trading for Noel and Ryan O'Reilly from the Blues, it did remove some potential options for the Vegas Golden Knights, and did shorten this video a little bit because I had both those guys on this list. But I do think that the Vegas Golden Knights, with everything that's going on, could make a move here at the deadline for one, maybe even two guys that could definitely improve what this team can do. So that's exactly what I'm talking about today. I have 4 guys that I think Vegas could end up targeting in this year's trade deadline as it approaches on March 3rd. So as mentioned, we're going to go through each guy. We're going to talk about the name, the age, how they fit in with Vegas, what teams are going to be looking for, and what they could bring to this team short-term and long-term. So let's go and get right into things. First guy I want to talk about is going to be Ivan Barbashev. Now, I will say every time I do a video about the NHL, I'm always butchering names, so sorry about this. I do look it up, but sometimes my brain by the time I record just completely erases how to say names. But we're just going to go by first name basis on most of these guys. Ivan, who is currently 27 years old, has a lot of potential, and even after showing production last year with 26 goals and 60 points, he missed only one game, which is a huge plus for the Vegas Golden Knights, who have been dealing with a lot of injuries. Those aren't, phenomenal, star level, elite level numbers, but it's definitely a big time improvement. You bring in a guy that's scoring, 26 goals from last year. That's a really, really good number. And for a Vegas team that kind of doesn't have a whole lot of scoring after you get past some of the top guys and like Eichel and Karlsson, he could be a really, really good addition to your team. Along with those 60 points, could be a great piece. I think a big thing, of course, with Ivan is going to be the fact that he is there. He is consistently there. He's not getting any big-time injuries that's going to make him miss time. That's a big-time factor. Jack Eichel's going in and out of the rotation all the time. Of course, Mark Stone's out. You're dealing with a goalie injury right now in Logan Thompson. You're seeing players going in and out of the rotation. Getting a guy like Ivan who can stay in the rotation could be a big factor for the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, Ivan will become an unrestricted free agent like most of these guys are going to be. So, you get him for pretty much a rental. And depending on what he's looking for, which I think he's going to look for a good number. He's 27. He's still a young guy in hockey terms. He's putting up solid numbers. I don't know if he's going to be in the realm of possibility for Vegas to sign him again after this year ends. But as a rental, what he can bring to this team could be a really good option. And, Ivan is a solid option for a guy that gives you production, stays healthy, and can bring a lot to this team as they push towards the playoffs and even into the playoffs. I think Ivan's a really good option here. Now, of course, he is on the Blues, and hopefully by the time this comes out, or I didn't miss it, he hasn't been traded, of course, with all these trades that are going on now. But I think Ivan could be a solid option for Vegas and maybe wouldn't cost too much. Although he's young and he's giving you good production, the Blues seemingly are about to start rebuild, and when you're rebuilding, you're not getting as much assets in return for a guy like this because of the fact that you're rebuilding and everyone knows it. They're not going to be willing to trade, a bunch of picks, players, assets to a team like this that's about to rebuild versus a team that's desperate for it because they're trying to make a playoff push. You're willing to trade with that. So Ivan could be a solid option for the Vegas Golden Knights. The next guy here is a name that's been linked to the Knights a lot, and I think might be one of the most likely options along with the guy we're going to cover right after this, and that's going to be Timo Meier. Now, he is a left winger, and I think he might be the best, option in all of the trade deadline that's going on right now. Maybe the flashiest name and everything. Timo would be a great young ad for the Knights. At 26 years old, Timo has already given a lot of high-level play shown, and he's garnered a lot of attention. Of course, for the San Jose Sharks, they're a bottom feeder at this current moment in the league, and maybe not bottom feeder, but they're not at the level of like playoffs. And I think Timo Meier could definitely get moved out because what you could get in return, if they're willing to kind of try to flip it quick through the draft, Timo could definitely be on the move. And he just is barely under 1 point per game, and he could add scoring to a Vegas team that has seen struggles with that a lot. We covered this already a little bit with Ivan, but I think Timo's definitely a big improvement over what Ivan could bring in terms of your scoring ability. With 30-plus goals on 12 shooting percentage, of course, that means you're scoring 12% of the time that you're shooting. That's a good number to bring along with that. He's also got 41 assists in 77 games from last year. He could be a big-time add for Vegas. Now, because of his, kind of play and his age, he could require a little bit more in return for this trade, which could be enough to pull Vegas away from it. Yes, they're not afraid to turn away from big-time trades. Mark Stone was a big-time trade. You got, of course, Jack Eichel. Vegas isn't afraid to make big-time trades like this, but I think Timo Meier potentially might cost too much for Vegas, a team that still sits number one in the Pacific. I think they're one off or might be number one in the entire West. Maybe what you'd have to trade in return, less his draft picks, might be too much. But again, Vegas hasn't had a whole lot of first-round draft picks. I don't even know if they're going to be willing to throw one first because they want to have an opportunity to build some of their own prospects. But the Knights may be willing to do this. They've made big-time trades before. The only thing is, if they'll be willing to and be able to give him a contract after this year, with how much you'd have to trade for a guy like Timo, and the fact that it'd be more of a rental for Vegas, who I don't see being able to re-sign him, I'm not sure if they're going to be willing to go after him unless they can work the cap space through it, get them under cap, bring in a guy like Timo, and get them enough cap space that they can re-sign him next year. That's one way, but I think he's a little bit out of the realm of possibilities for Vegas. Now, the next guy here, kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, at least in age terms, is going to be Patrick Kane. Now, of course, from the Blackhawks, Kane has been linked to Vegas a lot this year, and it's pretty much since the beginning of the year been talked about the fact that he could be brought to this team, and he's going to be a free agent next year, which again allows you to bring him in as a rental and not worry about the cap situation later on down the road, and worry about when Stone returns is going to be a cap issue because you don't have to worry about him. That's kind of been a big focus here, is getting guys that are rentals, getting guys that are fixes now but won't cause problems later. And Kane has kind of had a poor year, only 9 goals in 46 games. You bring along with 26 assists. He's been dealing with some injuries as well, and he's like 33. He's been dealing with this hip injury this season, and Vegas already dealing with a whole lot of injuries. It could be enough for them to stray away from Patrick Kane because of the injuries. They don't need more guys that aren't going to be willing to play. But we know what Kane can bring. He can bring you scoring, and of course 26 assists is a pretty solid number from a guy that's 33. A low deal. Maybe you can bring him back on close to minimum next year. This could be an option if you want a guy similar to Phil Kessel. Phil Kessel's had a great stretch of games this past bit right here. Maybe bringing another older guy like Kane who could do similar to Kessel on different lines. That could be a good option here, and honestly, Kane might be the most likely option unless they're straying away from him due to injuries. Now, the next guy and the final guy is, in a similar spectrum to what the first guys were in Timo Meier. Now, I will mention real quick, I did not put goalies on the list because there were some reports that Vegas is not going to be targeting goalies because Adin Hill will be returning, Adin Hill has been performing good and Logan Thompson should be returning soon, so no goalies on this list, although I wouldn't be too surprised if they brought in like a lower level guy that could fill in for, if multiple injuries occur or Brossoit's not doing good, I could see something like that. But my last guy is going to be Tyler Bertuzzi, of course, on the Red Wings. And the big thing with the Red Wings, who just took a big loss, I think, last night to the Seattle Kraken, they've kind of went on a run here, which might be enough for the Red Wings to no longer want to move on from Tyler because he is a young guy. If this team can make a push towards the playoffs, you don't want to lose a guy that could be part of your future long term. Now, he's had a little bit of a down year with 11 points in 23 games, and he could be on the move for a Red Wings team that hasn't reached the potential they wanted, but is kind of starting to turn it around. So that could be a reason why this move could occur. But even with a down year, at 27 years old, he's still a young guy. He's already proven to himself that he can be a great talent with 62 points in 68 games last year, just slightly below 1 point per game, which for most people is like high-level plays, 1 point per game. He could be a really nice addition for the Golden Knights coming up at the trade deadline. And they're not, Vegas is kind of lacking a multi-level scorer, which I think Tyler Bertuzzi could fill in that need and work pretty well with the lines that you currently have going. But with the Red Wings on that winning streak and making the playoff push, potentially thinking that they're playoff contenders long term, I could see them sitting on him and willing to hold him. But I think he could be a pretty solid option. Maybe wouldn't be such a big trade market pertaining to him versus what Timo Meier would likely call because he's having down years. So you could probably get him for cheaper. But those are my 4 guys. Maybe not the biggest list, maybe not too in-depth, but I think Vegas will make a move. Maybe not a big-time move like one of these big names like Timo Meier, but they have this cap space due to the Mark Stone injury. They have the willingness to do it. They've already shown that with trades like Jack Eichel. And they're playing really good right now. They're on a 5-game win streak. They've scored 5+ goals in, 4 of the 5 games since the All-Star break. They're doing really, really good. And with that cap space and with how they've been playing, they certainly might be willing to make a move to just push them even further into contender level because it's going to be tough in the playoffs no matter what. That's just how it is in the NHL. It's always tough matchups. Maybe bring in a guy like one of these guys to upgrade that. But what do you guys think? Who do you hope that Vegas will bring in at the trade deadline? Now, do you think they will make a trade? Comment all that down below if you enjoy this content. Please like and subscribe. It truly means the world to me. And as always, I hope it's someday. Hope it made you smile. Hope it laughs. And really important to me. Affects someone's day in a great way. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.